Welcome everyone to the Authentic as Fuck podcast. My name is San. I am a storyteller and a marketer, and in this podcast, I interview entrepreneurs and creators on kind of their life story that made them who they are today. So today's guest is Eric Balance Ladsack. Eric is a communicator, guide, conscious entrepreneur whose mission is to bring balance back to our world through the power of compassionate leadership and heart intelligence. Host of the personal empowerment podcast, The Resilient Minds, Eric's incredible journey has connected him with global leaders in conscious development, culminating his online presence, his spiritual practice, and his ability to guide us all into getting most out of life by reconnecting with our wisdom. Thank you so much for coming on today, Eric. Did I get your last name right? Is that Latsak?
Yeah, so I go by. You can just go Eric Balance. Lajczak is my like Polish name that always has been a difficulty for most people to say. So I just go by Eric Balance. But again, Lajczak is my my
Okay.
Polish name, and yeah, so it's totally good, man.
I was going
Thank
by
you for
Eric
doing
Balance.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
going by Eric Balance anyway. Like actually, like I was today. I saw your last name. I was like, oh, I actually thought your last name was Balance.
So Balance became my artistic name because of the balance that I have chosen to find within myself, and
Got
you
it.
know, it's ongoing, like finding within, going the narrative of going within, walking the path. However, I found when people were struggling to express my last name, I was like, you know what? I'm really seeking balance in my life. So why don't I just use that as my artistic name? And that's then eventually
Great
how I
word.
became known. Yeah.
So, well, why don't we start there? Like, can you kind of, in your own words, tell us about what you do, kind of what your mission is, like what is the change that you want to bring on this world?
I really, when people ask me, Eric, what do you do? I always say, you know, I don't really do anything. I'm more of being myself. And so the reason that I say that is because it allows people to open up their hearts and minds to their true identity. And you know, you've spoken about compassionate leadership, you know, leaving this world behind better than we found it. And there's this beautiful expression, you know, Napoleon Hill, a lot of, you know, Jesus, Buddha, different prophets, different leaders, they talk about the golden rule. And the golden rule is really about how can we treat each other's or offer to the world, you know, how we'd like to be treated. And is it possible that more of us can have this way of being? And so to me, it's about enhancing the experience of life for myself in a space of compassion and devotion to something greater than myself, because of that responsibility that we choose and get to step in if we want. And that is how I believe we get to pass on a space of integrity and values of highest, most outstanding level of principles to the next generation. And by doing that, we have to take action, because intention is great, but without action, intention becomes a paved road to hell. It's once we implement the action that we start to build heaven. And so that is a responsibility that I've chosen to completely step into by helping, you know, business and curation of conscious business, of how to focus on the economic prosperity of the person and the human development of the being sitting in front of us versus the dollar value that is at the profit and loss statement. And as a result of that relationship, we start to then cultivate and culminate in a more inherent nature of our true abundance and our true wealth versus a transaction where it's like horse trading. And so that changes the nature of what we start to cultivate. And as a result, I believe that we'll leave the world, that in my little bit of added value, I'll leave the world a little bit better. And that will continue and create a ripple effect, so that more people are having that experience with one another in that state of reverence.
Yeah, you're almost leading by example. So what can I ask you, like, I want to actually dive deep into like your life that led you to this that this kind of realization. But like when you said, by the way, what you said about being like being me, um, I love that, because like when I think all of us, our identity is tied to our job, right? So I'm a designer, oh, I'm a copywriter, like whatever we are, that's, but like just we don't really think about, okay, who are we as a person or a human being or something like that. So I thought when you said that, I thought that was very intriguing. And quickly, like, because when people ask you, what do you do, and you're like, oh, I'm just being me, right? And I would assume everybody is right now having this question. It's like, what does that look like? So like on a day to day, or like week to week, or month to month, can you kind of give me an example of what that looks like? Like, how do you pay your bills? Like, like if you don't work, like,
Yeah, I mean, for a very long time, I was investing into this meaning, into this devotion, um, into this mission, where I was using fiat to invest into helping this message get out. When we connected years ago, it was in the middle of COVID, you and I was in the jungle, remember, in Brazil.
you were like
And
in your own
so,
world. You didn't even COVID
yeah,
didn't even affect you.
no, not at all. And I was fully in Brazil, and I was working on my internal self in such a deep capacity. So I was constantly investing into myself, into my spiritual development, into my conscious development. And COVID was something that was not like, I wasn't even paying attention to the noise. I was focusing on the message, the mission. And that was a constant. So because I was at that point, my identity was a business marketer. So I was helping organizations developing their message, and that was how I was really paying for this development within myself. And I was also investing into other people. And what I noticed during that time, Sunny, is like, people were so much more focused on just the exchange of a dollar amount versus the value. So I was hoping that a lot of people would step up to this capacity of, okay, I was going to pay and invest into your help to help me get this message across. And a lot of the times, 9 times out of 10, people didn't follow through on their commitments. So needless to say, I lost a lot of money. And that investment into that message, or into those people, or into that development, or into that, it didn't give its return on investment in terms of the money, but it gave me a return on investment in terms of the lessons. And those lessons were consistently becoming of like, okay, what is it within myself that I am not doing to show up properly to give these people even more certainty? So I was just paying them with money, but what I realized that I was doing was I was just feeding what was not true. What I was feeding what was not true, and I was also existing in that capacity because I was constantly seeking money to making sure that I was able to fulfill this lifestyle. And so that led me to really get even more curious of how can I serve from this place of devotion, and get people to work alongside me in a community that we are moving towards a shared purpose. And so it led me to Ibiza, where I got to really live there for a while. I was in a house, and we created some beautiful events there, and I got to know a lot of the community. And again, a lot of people, even though they said they wanted to do things, the actions didn't follow
What are
what the
those things?
word.
Like, for example, just
So like community events, or uh, permaculture, like the growing of
okay. So
food.
something that's gonna help
Um,
them, like,
it was something that was not just going to help them, but it was going to help the community as a whole. So I went to Ibiza, and I had this beautiful villa that I rented, and I invited people to come stay with me, and I said, hey, let's work together on making things happen. And then once they got there, it kind of went and dispersed and did their own thing. And I said, well, what's going on, guys? Where's this place of integrity? Like, how can we work together towards a common shared purpose, and helping people wanting to see it? Because on the island, there was a lot of people also doing these things. And I was like, okay, great. Well, how can we work together as a community on the island to really unfold and unpack this capacity to create a mirror of what's possible, meaning an example on the island of living in this place where we can be self-sustaining. So taking care of the water, looking after, the land, being really in the works, right?
Mm-hmm,
And so, because a lot of people were talking about it, and I saw a lot of like discussion about it, what was lacking from my point of view was the communication with each other, the coming together towards that shared purpose. And so this is something that I was recognizing patterns, and I kept asking myself, what can I do better? What can I do better? How can I take more responsibility of what this looks like?
mm-hmm.
And I would invest my money into these experiences, or I would invest my money into the land, or I would invest my money into a project, or into how to present a project to a greater investor, to show them that, hey, let's create this vision together. Let's work towards a shared purpose together. And a lot of people said, yeah, I'm all in. But once the money dried out, guess where they left, or where they went? They disappeared.
So I guess like what you're talking about is kind of like the because like I think there's two ways of doing this type of work. There, like you said, there is like the commercial way of like you have to generate revenue. Like there's like the private way of doing it, and then obviously there are people out there who are like nonprofits who raise money to do this type of work. And I think it actually, but I think that problem happens in both actually, because like even in a company, when I manage people, when I know that this is just an exchange of me, you're only here because I'm paying you a salary, and you're only going to do just as much as I pay you, and like that just doesn't work in a corporate environment either, because everybody's like has their own agenda.
Well, that's my challenge in our society, right? Everybody's looking after their own best interest. Most people, sorry, I'm not going to say everybody, because that's distorting, deleting, and overgeneralizing information. But what I'm saying is that I saw a pattern, a constant pattern of it's me versus you, instead of wait, let's put our.
Do you think as we're naturally like that, humans, or do you think we're naturally selfless, or do you think we're naturally selfish?
No, we're naturally selfless. And so when we're children, all we want to do is hang out and be with each other, and like learn and play. And then societal construct starts to create this barrier, or this silo, to help you what's best only for you. And so it's like, even if you look back at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this comes from the brainwave, or from the understanding that we need to take care of ourselves first. And it's actually, if we realize that we are part of evolutionary psychology, and we are awakened souls, once we actually come into this narrative, or come into the physical reality, then that's inverse. We actually step into the self-realization, and we build upon. And so that becomes the openness, or the V, which is also the chalice, or the holy grail, the opening that connects us to divine source. Because the hierarchy of needs is not a hierarchy, it's an organism. And so it's defined from the thought process of meaning to look after only myself. And in our true nature, we are part of all of the organism. We are the organism. We are the essence inversed, the universe inversed. So if it gives us the capacity, and if we identify that and are aware of that at a very young age, and are educated on that from a very young age, then we start to help people understand that it is in unity that we actually come together and we coexist, co-elevate, co-create.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with the fact that we're taught to be selfish. We're not naturally selfish, and it sounds like you're trying to undo that work so people understand that, you know, it's not all like dog eat dog world out there. So let's kind of back up a little bit. Like, so what I want to kind of start with your early, kind of your upbringing all the way to like maybe your school years, college and whatnot, and then after that, like I want to know like what turn of events happened to even like led you to go to Brazil or like even do this type of work. So let's start with kind of your upbringing. Like what was your upbringing like? What was your family like?
So, brother, I'm very blessed. Like, I can't even tell you how much of a gift I have of my family, my parents, and the level of faith that they have in something greater than ourselves. And so when I think of them, it makes me feel so connected, because it didn't matter what was going on in my life. They've always been there for me. And so at a young age, my grandfather, who regularly is, you know, he's constantly there. He is a man of power, a man of complete devotion, a man of complete action. And a lot of people would really respect my grandfather. And his playfulness with me until he died when I was 5 was bar none. Like, he was the most gentle, sweet, loving man. And however, like, nobody fucked with him. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like this like
He had the
beauty.
balance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there was this, like, this was total safety, right? Total safety. And he really nurtured that, and he passed that on to my father. You know, he passed that on to how my father, my teacher, that I didn't know was teaching me for such a long time, unconsciously or consciously, because of his ability to just hold space without needing to be seen. But also, again, man of action, man of devotion and commitment to my mother, that is also like a spark of fire that, like, shares what she believes, that is who she is, that doesn't, you know, hide, and is joyful in her nature, but also super nurturing and loving, and like thinks of all the beautiful things and the artistic and the expression. And so as I was growing up, uh, you know, the challenges of society, and especially money, were very prevalent in our home, because my dad didn't speak lots of English, and my mother was, you know, learning, and they were cleaning. So they were doing what they could to create ends meet. And there was a lot of arguments in the house only about money. And it was never about anything except money. So money was always the biggest kind of disconnect that I heard or listened to as I was growing older, or growing up. And I remember, like, being in high school and seeing, oh my goodness, like, maybe I can help with making money. So, you know, I noticed people were selling drugs and doing things. So I started selling drugs. I started selling first weed, and then cocaine, and then crack. Uh, and I became a crack addict. At the age of 16, I started smoking crack, and uh, it was destroying my family and my parents' nature in terms of their self. And it was for 3 years where I was in and out of the house, you know, in and out of Edmonton, my hometown, just struggled with the police, fought with the police, you know, part of gangs, you know, doing really fucked up shit. And it by the age of 19, like, I thought, you know, I was in and out of, you know, holding cells. And I got caught for trafficking, for the possession for the purpose of trafficking. And my dad, countless times they tried to get me to go to rehab, and I wouldn't go. I was basically my internal self, or my egoic self, would say, I'm either going to die, I'm either going to end up in prison, or, and that's the way that, my life is going to turn out. And there was a question at some point my father asked me, like, can you maybe not even do this for yourself? Maybe not even for me or for your mom, but maybe for your future self. And something shifted, man. And it was like the most powerful experience. It was like my soul came out of me, looked at me right in the face and said, wake the fuck up, man. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, let's go, because if something changes,
Do you think it was just do you think that it was just a rock bottom moment? Like, what was the thing? Why do you think at that moment you were finally able to? I'm always like, because when I hear stories like of addiction, like it's always I'm always like really curious, like what was the thing? What was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like, I guess your dad saying that.
Yeah, well, it was definitely the question,
Mm-hmm.
because I do believe it was the quality of the question. And it was because I think I was tired. Not I think, I know I was tired of being so angry. I was tired of uh, this constant fight, this
Who did you
constant.
think you were angry at?
Uh, it's so yeah. So this is a good question, because what I noticed is the reason that I went into drugs and selling drugs was because, although I was raised in a family that was super nurturing, loving, what society had passed or projected into the family was, instead of the wealth of who they were in their nature, it had projected that money was more important, because that's the only argument that came up.
Mm-hmm.
And so society and culture had really projected into a really wholesome, loving, unconditionally loving family that money is way more valuable than the beingness with each other. And this was profound. So that was my biggest anger, is that what the fuck is wrong with this world? Why the fuck are we valuing something that is so done and created by humans versus the soul and the spirit of our connection with each other? And it was like, it's almost like I was like, what's the point of living? What's the fucking point of living? So I
It's
just
almost like
started getting
it. It sounds like you were kind of almost angry at money.
angry at the way money was being communicated and manipulated,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing that it was still communicated and manipulated
Yeah.
in a disempowering way, and not even knowing uh, how much, like what I know now, in terms of the manipulation from the corruption from the Federal Reserve or the
Yeah.
government side of things, right? So, like, not even knowing any of that, I was pissed off. It's like almost like I felt it.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And you know what? It's I don't know if you heard of this show on Netflix. The fuck, I forgot his name. The Indian guy who talks about personal finance. Um, Ramit Sethi. So he has this show on Netflix about like where he works with couples on helping them in their personal finance. Like they're all like they're in debt and he's trying to help them. But almost every one of them, uh, the thing that's hurting their relationship was money. Whether it's they're fighting about money, they're worried about whatever it was, like the tension that was creating in the relationship was actually rooted from money. So I can totally see what you mean by like money just has this energy about it that just like makes people do nasty shit.
Right. And it comes from the mind process of its hierarchy as well. Right. So think about it. Right. If our need for it in the traditional sense of Maslow's hierarchy is security, and it's the foundation, and we are not creating a strong foundation of money, then we must be a failure, right? We must not be creating that security for the
Yeah,
people
like
that
we
need
did
us.
something wrong. Yeah.
And then because of that thought process, and because Abraham Maslow's communication has been that way, and it's always being like, it's almost like since some sort of fucking scripture and truth and like gospel, that I don't believe to be true, but because people don't question anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the point is that as a byproduct, that's actually what the Federal Reserve and the governments have then used as manipulation to then enslave people, not even knowing that we are being enslaved.
That's true. I mean, like that's
Right?
what like a good example of that is like not the government, but the government's probably doing something similar. But like those payday loans and those like short term, like those really high interest loans,
Mm-hmm.
where they target people who are like need cash today. Like that is completely designed to make the like it's designed in a way it'll make sure that they never get out of poverty. Like so, yeah, it's kind of sad. Yeah.
It's very sad. And so if our, traditionally, if our society is in economic prosperity, then as a result, everybody wins. So what is happening here is that there is a severe manipulation because of somebody's perspective, or a few people's perspectives, on the way that they feel like they need to control. And
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
they don't feel like they're enough, they need to control other people to feel like they're enough. And so this then becomes it becomes what they call, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So once we decide who we actually are in the evolution of our sense of self, then we could actually be in that space of abundance and contribute our energy to that space of abundance. But it doesn't start unless we find it within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm noticing is that, when I went to rehab, it was
So
very,
after
very
that
much.
conversation with your dad, you
Yeah.
decided to actually go to rehab. Okay.
Yeah, so I did end up going, and it was, I needed to pee in a cup and do all these things, but it wasn't my pee and all these things. Like it was the pure devotion of being able to trust in a higher faith, and I was guided to be led into that.
Is your family
Uh,
religious, or
so at that time they were extremely like Christian Catholic.
got it?
And very, very much, prayer, rosary, things like this. So
Got it.
that was very much the experience at that time in my life.
Which I actually
It's very
think is
different.
very helpful. I feel like because if you look at like the 12 steps program, it's very closely tied to like spirituality, and I feel like that's an important part of it actually.
Well, it's actually everything. So because I got to spend time with, so I was at an Indian Métis rehab center. So it was in Bonnyville, Alberta, and they had a lot of elders there. So I did a lot of sweat lodges. I spent a lot of time in, ceremonies, and I learned a lot from spirit. I learned a
Mm,
lot from, and when I say ceremonies, it wasn't like medicine, ayahuasca, things like this. In those ceremonies during that time in rehab, it was only like sweat lodge. It was very natural. It wasn't,
okay.
not saying that medicine isn't natural, because it's very natural. But what I'm saying is at that point in time, obviously here it wasn't like ayahuasca and all these things, they weren't legal here, and I don't think there even are yet in
No,
Canada,
yeah.
which is unfortunate. But the point is that that was based off of faith. It was based off of singing with the elders, communicating with the elders, listening to the elders, praying with the elders, sweating with the elders, and learning to listen. And the more that I was in this darkness of the sweat lodges, and the more that I learned the power of what that means in the womb of our mother, our divine mother, the more I understood that I was listening to our true nature within ourselves. And then after I was 7 weeks in rehab, I ended up going back to university, president of the University Accounting Club, doing all these things for achievement, got married, did all these things that society had
Wait,
deemed
so
that is
you
what. Go ahead.
after that first rehab, you were good? Because like that's
Oh,
rare, right? Like most people usually go through a few times they fail, right, before they actually. Um,
yeah. So that was my first like rehab. I did a lot of like detoxes that I failed at, but that was my first
oh, got
rehab.
it.
And
Okay,
I did succeed, and I did get,
that's yeah,
but I went
good for
back
you.
into society to really create my success. What
It sounds
success?
like you picked up a new addiction. You dropped one addiction and you picked up another addiction, which is success.
Yep, basically,
Which is kind of
100%.
typical, right? That's what we all do.
Yeah, this is a great point, and also what it wasn't even from my perspective now. It wasn't what true success means. It was
Hmm.
the illusion of success.
It's a different kind of success than what you're thinking now. Like your idea of success was like more material things, maybe. Yeah.
Material, how I'm perceived, what people think,
Mm-mm.
uh,
Got it. Yeah.
titles, all this
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah. The same thing that we all go through, that we all worry about. So how? Yeah, let's kind of can we move on to that part of the story? I'm really curious how, because like I had no idea about this younger story of you. So when you were telling me, I was like, wow, like I was trying to like picture you, the younger version of you, and like I was like, wow. So I would love to see like how you, because it sounded like your life was completely different that now, like almost like total opposite. So I want to hear about the transition of going from there to where you are today.
Yeah, so I worked in a multiple different places. I tried to do the rat race thing. Worked at welding and oil gas refineries. I sold cars. I went to university for accounting and finance. Tried that for a bit, and I was like, this is all just bullshit. I
Mm,
got married and had the house and the white picket fence, and I was completely unsatisfied. And it wasn't because of anything around me. It was just because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my point of living was. I didn't know why I existed. And I tried to do everything that the world had projected onto me that means success or that means true fulfillment. And it was all bullshit. It was all
mm,
just like, it, it was all just lies.
mm,
And I didn't feel fulfilled. And success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
mm,
It's there's it's temporary failure if you choose to continue it. If you change your approach, then you get to find something deeper, and that's what I did. Is I had a really deep conversation with my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, and I didn't know how to handle it, but I knew I needed to do something bigger, and I needed to
mm,
trust that, and I needed to follow that. And you know if I knew what I knew today, I probably would have handled that conversation and uh, that shift a lot better. But I didn't know how, and I was like, "This is what I need to do." And if you're with me, you're with me. If you're not, then you're not, and that's fine.
mhm.
Um, and
At
it,
that time, were you starting to kind of get into personal development at all? Were you, um, yeah.
Yeah, so I was already I went to a couple of different Tony Robbins, like smaller events,
Mm.
and I was already like really curious about it, and I wanted to go deeper, and I didn't know how. But I remember, even because at that time I was selling cars, I came back to the dealership. I was at BMW, and I was like, "Oh, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this," and people were like laughing at me. They're like, "Okay, Tony Robbins."
Oh, you
And
mean like at work?
yeah,
You were like, we can do this, like, for work.
yeah, like, so I
Uh,
came into like, we can implement this, and we can
uh,
start
uh,
doing this, and we can start creating this type of like
uh,
scenario, and help people do this, and encourage our culture here and there.
uh,
And people would look at me and say like, "Okay, Tony Robbins, like, go fuck yourself." Like, seriously. And I was like, "You
That's
guys
what
are
happened to
unreal,
me
man."
when after I worked a 4 hour work week, and I was telling all my friends. People were like making fun of me. But anyway, yeah,
It, it,
okay.
it, it, it's unreal, man. And it was just like, I was just like, okay, well, great. So now I know what I need to do. Now I need to go out on myself, and I need to uh, get curious about building my own business, because people are clearly not fucking listening,
How
or they're
long
just,
after the rehab and till you decided to like actually like change your
yeah.
career? Um,
So I
yeah.
was for a decade there after the rehab,
Okay, so it
10
was a
years.
slow process. It
Yeah.
wasn't like
So
overnight. Yeah.
no, for 10 years, I kind of, because I went to university, I worked in the oil field. I, got found my fiance, and then got married. So by the time, from around 20 to 30 was that 10-year process of finding what's real, and testing out type of the scenario of the planet's or society's kind of standards, and what
Mm,
they deem to be successful. So I literally tested out for a decade. I had all the accolades, the Future Business Leader Awards, all the like Dean Awards, I've even left a legacy in my university called Meet the Firm, where I organized events for so that the firms would come and meet the students, and we could then people have an easier place of generating jobs,
mhm,
because I was like, I'm gonna go out there, and I'm gonna fucking make it easier, if not just for me but for everybody.
mhm,
And it was like, bro, once I got into the corporate environment, I lasted 3 months, and I was like, this is bullshit. You're so full of shit. It's so suppressing and demeaning, and from my perspective doesn't bring any type of magic to a person's imagination. It puts people in a fucking box. And I was like, see you later, I'm out. I don't care how much time, school, commitment, I'm not wasting my one more second into something that I don't feel that I'm passionate about.
mm,
And see you later, I'll figure it out. I trust in something greater, and I trust in myself, and I'll keep moving forward. And that's what I did. And then, so I started this online health and coaching, because I was super fit. I just finished a bodybuilding competition where I became a very fit. And
mm,
people were asking like, how can you help me? Can you help me more? So I just was like, yeah, this is easy. I love it, and let's do it. And
mhm,
so it gave me the freedom that I needed at that time to find more of the pieces that I wanted to go all in on. And that was really learning about myself. And that's when I fully committed to the Tony Robbins environment. And that led me to getting curious about, okay, what's my like, because I still was lost. I still didn't know what my purpose was. I still didn't know, like, what is this knowing in me that needs to
mhm,
go deeper. Why do I still feel like there is something that I'm not seeing? And I was able to see a man like Tony stepping up to the capacity of what's true and owning it. And I saw that this man was in deep purpose. And so I needed to get clear what the fuck that man has found in him so that I could find it in myself. Because if I'm going to waste my life, I might as well use it to find what that is. And so that's what led me on that journey to get to then to the first and second and third Tony environment.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what really inspires people. When you see for me, when I see somebody who's 100% committed and devoted into what they're doing, and they have pride in what they do, and they love what they do, and they like, when you see somebody like really passionate about what they do, it almost makes me feel like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, like it inspires me want to be like, I don't, I don't know what that is, but I need to find my version of that. You know what I mean? Like that, I feel like that. So is that kind of what you were going through? Like,
Yeah.
I
So
gotta find my
it was
version of that.
it was like, for me, because I had such a nurturing environment, and because I was able to really know that I was like safe. What did I need to do bigger, and how can I step up to this capacity? And when I saw just the massive focus, and then the ability to even connect with Tony and him giving me a hug and things like this, it was just like, it helped me understand, okay, what is this? What's going on? What is happening here at a subconscious level? And I was getting curious about that because I didn't know what it meant. And so why is this continuously coming into me? And then that's when I got to sign up to one of his UPWs in London. And uh, it was from that place that I kind of devoted myself into the path. So I signed up for platinum partnerships, and I became one of his plats. And I didn't have the money, I didn't even care about the money, but I was like, I need to do this for myself. It was hard and it was scary because I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I just figured out a way. And it was knowing that my value is priceless. And so to me, what I needed, and when I was like talking to Sage, and I said, I don't know what it is in Tony, but I love that he is so committed, he's so focused, he's so devoted. And she said to me, Eric, like, what you see in him, you have in you. And I didn't understand that. At that moment in time, today I get it, but at that moment in time, I just was like, what do you mean? What does that even mean? And because we're all mirrors of each other.
Mm.
We're all mirrors of each other. And if we truly trust in that essence of our space, of our divine intelligence, then that mirror shows up and you see in others what you have within yourself. When I said, Tony, I really want to carry on a legacy like this, or I want to create a mission like this, or I want to pass on, something more meaningful like this. And he looked at me and he said, you'll create your own. And he smiled with love and his compassion, because I wanted it so bad, like I wanted it so bad. I just wanted to know who the fuck I am. And dude, it was like, I just didn't know. And then what led me is, like, I went into these different relationships and like veered off, and I got focused again on the money. And then my spirit was like, what are you doing? Why are you going towards that again? Why are you falling back in that pattern? And so I would put myself into these like environments where it's like, no, I took myself away from a relationship, and I was like, I need to be by myself. I need to figure out who the fuck I am. And I pushed women away, and I pushed
You
relationships
kind
away, and I
of
pushed.
do you tend to have like this, like, when you decide on something, you kind of go all in, and it's like, it sounds like you because you didn't have to push everybody away. But like it sounds like you tend to like overcorrect. Is, would that does that sound?
Well, there's a beautiful saying: when God wants to really make a man great, he will isolate him.
Mm-mm.
And so uh, I didn't know, but I was isolating myself. I was pushing because Ralph Waldo Emerson and many other great prophets have said, trust in yourself, trust thyself. And so it was actually about learning to love myself, to get to know myself, to feel and connect to myself at such a deep level that nothing could shake me around, because people would project their own bullshit onto me, right? For such a long time. This is what society does to all of us. So I needed to get into such a certain space
Yeah.
of knowing
I know
what
exactly
the
what you
fuck I
mean.
am. And
Because
so
when you
that
were,
led me. Go ahead.
let me, let's see if this is accurate. Like, because I see people in our space, I see this, like, they're like, yeah, I want to serve and blah, blah, blah. And then like, but then they get sucked right back into the, like, the conversion, the sales, the, like the Instagram followers, and they kind of fall back, and then they have, like, they go through this like ups and downs of, like, and I think it sounds like you went through some of that. You were like, you were kind of getting sucked back, like subconsciously getting sucked back into the whole success thing, and you're like, okay, what? No, that's not me. And then so you had to kind of isolate yourself to really think clearly and without any outside influence or something like that.
Right. And it was actually even like when I left Brazil and then I started trying to create bigger impact. I remember then, okay, I would go and I would start to create community, and everything was then about, okay, Eric, how can we do this? And then I would immediately go back to, okay, this is how much you pay me. This is how, and so
Hmm.
like it started to then become
I
again a
see. Yeah.
transaction. It was like you said, it came back to becoming a transaction. So this
Yeah.
pattern
Yeah. How many
behavior.
followers am I going to get from this? Like things like that.
Right. So it wasn't coming from true connection or trust to
Yeah.
something greater than myself. It was still coming from the limited mind experience that the limitation was really trying to create. So I wasn't completely attached or surrendered to my path. I was
Mm.
still thinking that I was the one that was incomplete. I was in complete control, which is bullshit. None of us are in control. We're here to serve. If we let go and we really trust in our divine nature, then we will serve without needing anything, because we know that everything will come to us. And so, but I didn't know that at the time. So I needed to use my intelligence to make sure it was all going to stack up and be structured and make it
Mhm.
happen. And I can still
That's our ego
remember
speaking.
right.
Yeah.
And because who am I, right? How my identity? I still
Mhm.
haven't didn't at that time fully let go, and so that's then when I moved to Tulum, and then moved to Ibiza after Brazil, and where I was trying to build these communities again, using kind of like that growth, that devotion, that here let's like invest into all of these experiences, and then using my mind, my intelligence to structure them in some capacity. But what I learned most from that experience is that because I was so devoted to it, because I was so committed to it, and because I allowed everything to go, uh, I learned that the right people would eventually show up. And at that point in time, I needed to see what was real and what was not. If it was about money, if it was service, or if it was
Okay.
about
Yeah.
if it was about the mission. And
Yeah. Like,
so when
if
I
you're
left,
dating a girl, you want to know if she's dating you for your money or she really likes you or something. Like, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and then I wanted to also, I think, prove to myself is that wait, this is not about the money. This is about the
yeah,
mission, right?
yeah,
Because if I really truly believe that we are wealthy and abundant in our nature, then I need to be okay with letting it all
yeah.
go.
So that sounds like, so you went through a very long journey to ultimately learn that lesson of, like, you know, I mean, obviously you learned it early on, but I think it took you a long time to, like, put it into actual action, like, where because it sounds like you kept getting pulled by the money, like the transaction, like even when you weren't trying not to, but then eventually you were able to get over
I
it.
think I think that's the thing. When we start to give more than we ever expect to receive, we tap into what they call the divine economy, and it is
I love that.
a space where you don't necessarily transcend money; you transcend the thought of money, and you realize that money is an illusion based off of a principle of human uh, decision, and our wealth and our abundance comes from human action.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, you said divine economy. I never heard that before. Like I love that because that's how I see when people say karma, right? That's kind of how, like, his. I always tell people that too. You have to give and you have to serve, right? But then they think what I mean is like, okay, I need to serve and I need to give this 15-minute free coaching call so I can, so they'll pay me to do a full, like, that's what they think it means. Like, I need to give so that I can get something back from them. But I actually think karma works in a way that sometimes I'm giving all to this person, but this person would betray me. But I get something from this other person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is the divine economy. That's what people don't understand, is that because we're all so interconnected, we could give in one side, and then all of a sudden on the other side, something comes to us. So
Exactly.
it's actually recognizing that level of divine intervention comes from infinite nature versus being so boxed in into one focus and not seeing
Yeah.
that there is levels of service that come from
Mm,
all sides of the coin.
yeah. And even I think even it's even more deeply connected than we think it is. Like, have you saw that Netflix documentary about mushrooms? Like I think it's called The Incredible Fungi.
Mycelium.
Yeah. My serious. Oh my gosh, like that blew my mind. Right, like how interconnected species are on this planet. Like it's mind boggling.
Well, that's the thing that our indigenous brothers and sisters down in South America, in Ecuador, in Peru, in Colombia, in Mexico, in Brazil, in the Amazon, the Honi Queen, the Yawanawa peoples that I'm very blessed to call my brothers and sisters, and the elders that I spent a lot of time with, they are master wisdom keepers that have been holding the space of this type of understanding of this mycelium network. And our great mother, whether you want to call her ayahuasca or the forest or whatever, she is in a deep devotion to allowing us to be in a space of trust. And if we can't trust ourselves, right, like she is the ultimate level of trust. And so people don't know what life is because they haven't felt their ego die. And so
Hmm.
they're constantly needing to hold on to something versus just trusting in this divinity. It's through us all. And that is what the mycelium experience is that this divine connection is a very real thing. We are part of true source intelligence and interconnection through our heart's wisdom. If we don't recognize that or choose to follow our heart's intention, amplify it with the level of intelligence of our mind, and really move with the devotion of our gut, then we are not really tapping into our infinite nature, because whatever you see around us is created by us, right? So if it's created by us, and literally whether it's a chair or a television or a telephone, that comes from the mind of somebody that had invented that. So if we know that that comes all together at a higher level of sense, or
Mm,
if we want to zoom out, then that interconnection, that collective consciousness, that collective intelligence brings us together with so much strength and so much intelligence to then devote our true nature into a space that will contribute to something way more greater than ourselves. And I believe that if people really recognize this and surrendered to this, that we would embody this organism.
Mm-hmm. I can even give you a practical example of that, right? Like, so if you're working in a company in a small group of people, right? If each one of those person are transactional and they're just like, okay, I'm here for what's to cover my own ass, right? Whenever it's like somebody else's idea and they're gonna get promoted over me, I'm gonna try to sabotage that project, and I'm gonna like now me and him are enemies, right? Like let's say there's a group of 5 people like that fighting against each other and kind of like hiding information, and on here we have a group of 5 people who 100% trust each other, is here to serve for the common goal of the like. Just think about a year later what's gonna happen, right? Like it's so obvious, and that what can we do that at a bigger scale? You know?
I love you, brother. Thank you. It's so true, and these practical applications in organizational levels, government levels, nation states, globally, we can do it. We can do it as a family. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe our generation is prepared to take on this responsibility. Our generation is the one that really is going to make a huge globalized experience for our children to really wake up in a dream, to wake up when they become born and say, hey, I get to fulfill my dreams. I get to live out my truest potential because we chose at our generation to take responsibility. And I'm grateful because that means that we are part of such a great calling, bro. And that means that
I do.
we
I do think that about our generation. We're so lucky.
yeah.
But go ahead. Yeah. Finish
No,
your thought.
I agree. It's nice to feel in such deep alignment with so many brothers and sisters that we're consciously choosing to say no more.
Yeah.
We're not scared.
And the
And
younger ones are even more brave. I feel like
yes,
the younger ones I meet nowadays. Yeah, the government thing, the politician is another example, right? Like, imagine if a politician's goal was to actually help the country and do good for the country and not just get elected on the next term, right? Like, imagine how how amazing this world would be. So, like, I'm 100% on board with you.
I mean, think of all of the resources, right? Like, think of all of the resources that are capable and willing to be devoted to so much more. The only people that don't want peace are those that profit by war. And
Mm,
this is something that we need to really ask ourselves. Why? Why is it that there is so much desire to protect ourselves instead of helping each other? And so, is there something that's at play here that we don't know that we don't know? And if there is, then if we start asking better questions, for example, what happened during the Weimar Republic just after World War One to then skyrocket that dollar bill, so that then as a result World War Two happened? And how did that transition affect us now, even to this day, with Germany and Japan having such highly inflated values of their currency when they were in deep exchange with the US dollar? Like, these questions that aren't being asked, or that aren't people are just accepting. It shows me that just the
You mean the German currency is um like you mean like how it bounced back up, or like I'm not sure exactly what
Yeah,
you're
so
referring
if
to.
you look at right now, the right now, for example, the Japanese currency is completely inflated, very inflated. It's probably one of the
Right
most
now.
inflated right now, one of the most inflated currencies in the planet. And the economy of Germany is also extremely affected. I mean, all of our economies are. However, it's all based off of the manipulation of the US dollar since 1971, when Richard Nixon decided
Oh, I
to.
see what you mean. Okay, yeah. The inflation of other currencies actually is because they're tied to the dollar.
Right.
Like other currencies are tied to the dollar.
But what something here that I would like to really point out and emphasize is what happened in World War II to Germany and Japan, right? Like
Yeah. So what's
who
the
took.
connection there? Like
Right.
between.
So if we remember correctly, or history serves us right, Germany with the Nazis and Japanese with the Pearl Harbor, they were the two, we can call it aggressors, during World War II.
Mhm.
And knowing what had happened with the nuclear bomb, right, and how that has affected Japan, and the infiltration of Germany with the Nazism and the thought process of Hitler.
Mhm.
How then now? Why is it being so affected even more? Those economies or those currencies with the U.S. dollar. Is there something there that we don't know that we don't know?
Oh, I see
Because
what you mean.
because if those were the two main aggressors, and those are also like Japan's being extremely affected even more than any other country in the world about the currencies, because of its tie to the US dollar, same with Germany, then there is something there that I encourage more of us to dig about or get
Mhm,
curious
mhm.
about.
Yeah, I think it's
Because yeah, go ahead.
go ahead because.
Well, because manipulation happens based off of fear, right? So if we're going to drop another nuclear bomb on your people, I'm
Mhm.
going to
I
I
agree.
am
Yeah.
going to do whatever you need
Yeah.
me to do to attach my economy to
Yeah.
yours. And I'm gonna do whatever so that we don't have that happen again,
Yeah.
and reinforce that type of narrative or power, because there's a need for
Yeah.
control out of the smallness of what's real. And that is too
I just
bad.
feel like in general right now, I don't know about like the whole world, but at least like in US and maybe Canada, like right now I feel like we have this very negative um outlook towards our future, right? Like so I just what you were saying about like, you know, when people are in fear, that's when they can be controlled, right? And right now I feel like so many people are living in fear. Like way more than let's say in the 50s or something like that, where so they're easier to control because they're more fear, right? And yeah, I think there's something to that. Why are we more like why do we feel more fear today than we did 50 years ago? Like there's something to that. Like a lot of us like and a lot of this I think is tied to money. Like a lot we fear because I don't even know if I get fired I can pay rent next month.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So the ultimate slavery, right?
Yeah.
And this system has been designed like this to enslave us all, right? And I told you about this story of money, right? Like the story of my experience of money is very, very prevalent and very true, because I was constantly focused on money in life. I didn't know what the real wealth within myself was until I spent time devoting myself to my internal journey. And so I could create this wealth narrative. And then it's like over the last year, I then devoted again, okay, let's try this again. Let's go
Mhm.
throughout the planet and bring together different experiences or people, uh, and focus not on the dollar value, but on what we can create as a whole. And everybody most people, I can't say everybody, most people were focused only on how are we going to be profitable, instead of seeing that what we need to do is delay our gratification and focus more on the future. People consistently are in this need for wanting to do things now
Mm,
because they can't see anything
mm.
past the next week or the next month or the next year, and they're not
I think that's gonna
recognizing.
take some time for them to get unbrainwashed, because that's, think about it, that's 16 years of school that planted that idea in our head. So we can't just easily, because I'm like that too. As soon as we start talking about something like I'm start thinking about profits, and I start thinking about, okay, how is this going to help us? I I feel like we're just so brainwashed to think that way. Do you know what I mean?
So what if we started to focus on how we can give value and offer that energy, knowing and trusting in ourselves enough to follow that level of principles, and then recognizing that the person in front of us is also on this devoted path towards a shared
Yeah,
purpose, because it's not about us. And I can tell you that there's a lot of communities that in the world that they want to do this. They want to, but they don't have a vehicle. They don't know what that
yeah,
vehicle
yeah.
looks like.
No, that,
And
so go ahead. They don't know what, and
no, go ahead. It's fine. I don't remember what I was going to say. It's all good.
I was gonna say, like, I agree with you that I don't think that it doesn't mean it's not possible, because obviously you've figured it out because you were that person and you were able to convert to. So I'm sure like it can be done. I'm just saying, like, it's probably gonna, and it sounds like this is your work. Like, your work is to try to get as many people to convert over to non-transactional thinking and more like human connection thinking, right? So, but I'm just saying, it's gonna, you got your work cut out for you, because it's gonna, like it took you a long time to actually, like, once you actually knew it, to actually change your actions. Like, you had to isolate yourself, and you had to go through like the whole process doing that. um it sounds like you can help other people do that go through that same process too. I'm just saying it's probably not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of work and time for
If
them to get.
anything in this life was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
However, there's those of us that pave a path to make it easier for others. And I believe that it's not just about uh, my work, it's about our collective work coming together. And also, what has been built, alongside communities, because there's a new standard available to us all. And I believe that Bitcoin is that standard. It will allow
Yeah,
us
I'm
to.
very I'm all in on Bitcoin. So
Right. So Bitcoin is the standard, the vehicle that will allow all of these businesses to come together. And so I've devoted myself to making sure that, our company Bitcoin Strategist is ultimately allowing more organizations transition small, medium enterprises into the Bitcoin economy, into what I call the divine economy, and making sure that that
no.
divine economy is presupposed by integrity, by value, by insights. And as a result of being a tech entrepreneur, or an engineer, or a doctor or lawyer, or mom and pop shop, we can help them transition into the divine economy, the Bitcoin economy, into a new and parallel economy that will give us a true sovereign
Yeah.
ability to live that. And that is, I'm here to build the new economy. I'm
I
here to, our great predecessor Jesus had said that in the temples, when people were exchanging, he flipped over tables and said, "I will not have my father's home become a den of thieves." And unfortunately, we've continued that den of thieves in a very serious way across the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here in this time and space to help build the new economy so that our children and our children's children are devoted to continuing that and securing that network so that we can ultimately remind everyone that our human exchange, our human action is the most divine exchange of wealth. And as a result, we create opportunity where all of us get to co-elevate and cooperate.
100% on board. And I also think decentralization is the answer. Like hospitals were started by the Catholic Church. Like we wouldn't have like the hospitals we have today, we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the Catholic Church. And the way it started was like you had the nuns, like the sisters they're the nurses, right? They take care of these patients and things like that. And in the modern world, as hospitals became more systemized and more like a factory, like now it's very sterile and there's no personal, like there's no personal relationship between the nurse and the patient, and like all of this is disappearing, and it's actually not a good thing, right? That's actually not a good thing for medicine, because it's the personal, the human to human. Like you don't like they're not accounting for the value of that. Like there's cost, there's actually value to that interaction. And I think decentralization is it, because whenever there's a small minority group of people that control a bigger thing, there's always going to be corruption. And I just feel like, the only way we can be completely fair, and for me to give, and not worry that I'm getting like duped, or somebody's like, that I'm not getting my credit that I deserve. Like, because I think that's the reason why people are so selfish, right? Because everybody had to fight for themselves. Oh, I did this work. Oh, I need to go fight for getting the credit for doing that work, right? I want everyone to know that I did. Like, so, but then imagine you don't have to, right? But the truth is, actually, you don't have to. Like, I saw that in almost every company I've seen, the person the worker who does the work, who's quiet, doesn't say anything, and then the person who doesn't do the work but takes all the credit, he does all the talking and takes all the credit. In a long enough timeline, everyone knows who's doing the real work. It doesn't matter like how much you're trying to like take the credit, or ultimately, long enough timeline, I think everyone knows who's really doing the work. So I think the truth always comes out at the end. But I think as humans, we don't know that. So I feel scared. Oh, I don't want to do this if I'm not going to get credit. You know what I mean? But I think decentralization will fix that, because when everything's decentralized, like I know for a fact that I'm going to get credit for that, because in the background, the blockchain is working, right? Right now, the reason why it doesn't work is because there's a human manager in between who favors this one person over you. And that changes everything. Do you know what I mean? So I'm all for decentralization. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is creating a space. That's what I love about the divine economy and Bitcoin. It allows us to really help everyone shine like the sun. There is no competition. Everybody is in cooperation, and in fact, we want to really help each other rise. So instead of competing, we're asking each other for support, and we're there for each other to support. And there's cooperation where nothing is hidden. There's no like hidden agendas, or everything is open source. And it changes the nature of duplicating work or doubling work, and people can focus on bigger problems, bigger solutions, and figuring out a better way to do the next task, instead of working in these silos doing the same thing and never communicating with each other. Because think about it, if more of our nations around the planet were communicate more effectively, how much more evolved would our humanity have already become if they stop being these from my perspective, peasants, because it's ultimately peasantry, the way that they're behaving,
It's a
instead of,
mentality, peasant mentality.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a peasant mentality because they're feeling like they need to control, versus really recognizing and setting into the saying, hey, you know, this is not about me. It's not about you. This is about a way bigger picture for all of us. Let's step into a space of abundance and true wealth, and recognize that our differences, having a thoughtful disagreement, stop having these conversations where it's, you're right, I'm wrong, or vice versa, and get curious about each other, and understand each other's differences, have compassion to each other's experiences. And then from that place, you get to really show up with abundance, with wealth, in terms of your essence, your presence, your nature, and service from the biggest grace of our divine teacher.
And the funny thing is, when you do that, the money automatically appears somehow. And you know, like I want to. This is so amazing. Like I feel like your story fits in so perfectly to what you do. It's like you grew up in this, you know, where, you know, the only fight was really about money, and you were always like had that you had that scarcity mentality growing up, right, in your childhood.
100%.
And it's what almost everybody goes through. Like I said, almost every argument is usually about money in a family or relationship, right? And then you saw how that hurts even the most, you know, the good of a family. Like you're a great family with good people, and even then, money can shake them, right? And it's almost like we live in this brainwashed world where we're always like scared of money, and we're always trying to control and trying to chase more, like. And that's kind of the world we live in. And it sounds like throughout your life, you've seen that unravel, and now you're trying to get people to disconnect from that, and let's disconnect from the transaction, and let's connect with humans, right? That's kind of like, sounds like it is your mission. So yeah, I mean, I think your story is like I can totally see how your story led to where you are today.
And brother, I just want to really emphasize that it is in our stories that we find these patterns, but it's also in the history, and because it's all our nature. So once we tap into this evolutionary theory of knowing that we are part of an organism that is billions of years old, we can start to recognize patterns, utilize those patterns, and then become masters of our future. And that is something that I believe most people, if they just got a little bit more curious, you know, we say this all the time, readers are leaders. We can tap into some of the most profound minds by reading and getting curious, and also questioning what you're reading, because just because it's written down in a book doesn't mean it's fucking true either. But so questioning that as well, and knowing, to trusting what really resonates in your moral compass. Because once you have a moral compass of outstanding level of integrity and values, you will ask for verification from people that you also hold at that standard. You won't think that it's only up to you. You will have the humility to say, you know, Sunny, what do you think, brother? Do you think that this is the right thing to move forward with? You know what, guys, I don't know this question. Let me find out and figure it out. I'll get somebody that really understands this scenario or this topic even better. Or you'll surround yourself, just like Henry Ford did, with amazing people around him and say, hey, how can I ask this? Or Andrew Carnegie, you know, he would always ask people that he didn't know, but he knew that he didn't know. And once you know that you don't know, you are willing to say, you know what? If I want to treat people the way that I want to be treated, I'm willing to ask the questions. And if I don't know, and I'm willing to say that I don't know, I will surround myself and arm myself with the greatest team in the planet to help. And I believe that the divine economy, the divine network, the Bitcoin network, or the Bitcoin community, or, you know, what I'm calling also the lighthouse network that I'm cultivating, or that we've been cultivating, because once you follow the light, you find out the lighthouse, right?
Mm.
And that is something that I believe is our mission, is our noble mission as a
Yeah.
as a family of co-creators, as a family of leaders, as a family of devoted people that are not here for ourselves, we're here to serve our greater self, and that means all of us together, right? So
Mm.
this is something. If we just ask more
Yeah.
questions and
And maybe
we
what you said about before, when you said you had to kind of isolate and you had to become more, go inwards. I actually think that if a lot of people did that, because that guy, like there's self-awareness, there's social awareness. And what you're saying is a lot of people are not really aware, like they don't go back and like see their stories and and recognize those patterns, like, because I agree with you about the pattern. Like, pattern is so powerful, like if you see these patterns and you know how to use them. And a good example is like how many, so many people like get into these toxic relationships and then they get out of it there and they're like, I'm never gonna date somebody like that again, or I'm never gonna, and then they get into another relationship exactly like that, and they see the red flags but they ignore the red flags, right? They're like, oh, but I love this person, so like, but it's probably no big deal, and so they ignore these red flags until something bad happens, and then they're like, I knew it. And the reason why they keep repeating that same mistake over and over and over again is because they're not recognizing that pattern. They're not recognizing this pattern of behavior, that toxic behavior you're doing to yourself. But if you were just like go inwards and you're a little bit more aware, I think you'll very quickly start to see it. At least that's what I think.
100%
Thank you
agree.
so much. So if somebody wants to join your community, be part of on board with this, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, find you?
I think LinkedIn has become my main platform. Although I do use a lot of Instagram, LinkedIn is really kind of more of my business platform where people can really connect. You can use Instagram to just follow kind of my updates and what's happening and how I'm sharing just kind of message. But if you want to connect with me, please reach out Eric Balance on LinkedIn.
I'll put all the links.
And yeah, and then if you want to check out what we're doing, feel free to check out balancemedia.ventures. And I've been sharing a lot about the resilient minds and how we're building the Lighthouse Network on there. So that podcast is everywhere as well. But brother, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank
Well,
you
thank you.
for yeah, it's a pleasure to connect with you, and thank you for helping me get this message out. It's very important, and I know we're on a divine mission. It's something that we get to step into as a collective, and I'm excited to want to serve alongside people that are excited about Bitcoin or mining or in building the infrastructure and wanting to devote their energy to a new standard, to a standard
Mhm.
that is willing to leave this world behind better than when we found it.
Thank you so much, Eric. You're definitely doing good work for the world. I'm 100%. I support you. I'm on board. This Bitcoin blockchain. I love all of it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Eric, also for being so open and vulnerable. It was very refreshing to hear you open up. So thank you, everyone. See you all next week, and thank you, Eric. And cheers.
I have one question before we go.
Yeah.
What is it right now that you need most, brother?
Right now, I need most. Let's see. For me, it's always time, right? Because there's just so many things I want to do, and I just have to I just need the time to do them. So right now, I've been working. Like, my main thing I've been working on is same thing, like you said. You can tell somebody something this, but they don't just change, right? It takes a really long time for somebody to change, and that's what I'm starting to realize. If for me to help somebody become a good storyteller, it's not like I just throw a course at them and they're like, okay, go learn, right? Like, I have to actually create a community, and like keep them going and keep them practicing and keep them, like resilient, right? That's kind of what I'm doing right now. I keep showing up. I keep trying to make sure they practice, they show up, and they're. But it takes a long time, so I would say it's probably just time.
I love it. I'd love to know how we can integrate that in the Lighthouse, brother. And maybe there's a way that you can really shine the communities, and we can bring those communities together to then shine a bigger light as a team. I'd really love to
For sure,
explore
yeah.
that, brother, if it feels aligned, and then we can help more of these amazing storytellers shine their light, whether it's in the Bitcoin network or in other networks, and then help them transition to monetizing by value, and then intersecting that with getting an exchange for Bitcoin. And so it becomes where everybody is benefiting each other, and they're shining their lights in a network that helps them be
Yeah.
their own best storytellers. So
I
uh,
really think that that's the future. I
yes,
really honestly believe that between Bitcoin, like the blockchains, and the creator economy, like something like what you're saying is gonna emerge out of that. So I think you're definitely going the right direction.
well,
So
all we got to do is just
yeah,
build it together,
yeah,
brother.
yeah. I'm all down for collab and to support you in any way. So definitely keep in touch. Thank you, Eric, again. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.